There we go. Welcome to episode 4 of the Space Prize Speaker Series. It's May 18th, 2022. We're here with our guest, Liam Kennedy, with our guest host, Baily Burns. I'll introduce both of them in just a few minutes, but happy to get started today. We've got a small live audience per usual, but hopefully we have some great interaction in the text and some great questions come time. And in the meantime, I'm looking forward to the conversation with Liam. So, just a couple of slides to kick things off so that everybody understands the context and what Space Prize is. For what it's worth, I'm Mark Wagner. I'm the president of the Space Prize Foundation. And I am joined today by our guest host, Baily Burns, who has also been a judge and mentor for Space Prize. So really excited to have her with us. I'll introduce her more properly in a few minutes. But want to say a few words about what the Space Prize is, and particularly about the inaugural prize that we are just about to wrap up in New York City. The culmination is next Saturday, about 10 days away. But we had an essay contest at 5 schools in 5 boroughs of the city, followed by a video contest and a round of final judging in the first 3 months of the year. And right at the end of March, the 25 finalists, as you can see here, got to experience a simulated mission to Mars at the Challenger Center in Manhattan. The program, since I sort of skipped it coming right in just now, is focused primarily on empowering and inspiring young women to pursue STEAM education and explore careers in the space industry. And we paint a very broad picture of careers in the space industry, as this speaker series is evidence of. But these 25 finalists got to experience the mission to Mars. They also got their faces up on massive billboards in Times Square, which, as you can imagine, for New York City school kids is pretty special. There was driving in of grandparents from out of town to see it and so forth. 4 of our winners got to attend Space Camp's new leadership program, Space Camp Lift in Huntsville, Alabama, which is a really spectacular opportunity to get them out of the city and on an adventure, and of course, learning a lot more about America's space program. And in 10 days, 5 winners will experience the zero-G effect on a parabolic flight with Zero-G Corporation. So we have our first mission patch amended to the slide now for the girls going up next Saturday. I think I can say now on this particular episode, we're really excited because Star Trek actress and activist Denise Crosby is going to be there with them. And we're really excited. We're going to fly them with some zero-G fashion accessories. I've heard of a space flower backpack and some eyewear going with them. So really, really cool stuff coming together for next Saturday. And there'll be a live stream with Reach the World and Celestial Citizens. So hope you guys will check that out as well. There's more things ahead, of course, for Space Prize. If you want to see what we're up to, just head to spaceprize.org. Things in the cooker right now, or another regional competition in France and one in Israel. A handful of other things coming up behind that. But I also want to mention that this summer we're releasing a space education textbook, or Flexbook. It's an online open source curriculum. It's meant to be a 12-week course. Could be an elective at a school, could be an after-school program, could be self-paced for kids. You can see sort of a selection of the chapter headings here, and each of those dials down into about a half dozen to a dozen lessons with interactives pulled from all over the web. So it will be freely available to students, teachers, and enthusiasts all over the globe, just like this speaker series. And this is really shaped up into something special. We've got astronauts, engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, designers, lawyers, historians. We have our zero-G fashion designers coming in now. Really a great lineup of mostly women, but some men as well, including today's guest speaker. And we're just so thrilled to be able to share this with students and teachers everywhere, learning about their career trajectories and career possibilities across the industry. So that brings us to all of you who are here today live. Definitely participate in the chat as much as you like. It's a really small group today, so you can use the raise hand feature, or you can just interrupt. I think, and I know Liam and Baily well enough to know none of them are going to be offended either. And feel free to unmute or share the screen, especially if you're invited to do that. And if you do use the help feature, that will send me a message as the host if you need any help with anything. The other thing is we may from time to time leave wait time between questions, which will give people an opportunity to jump in, especially during the Q&A segments. So that said, I need to more properly introduce today's guest host, Baily Burns, Space Prize judge and mentor. She's also an aerospace systems engineer at the Paragon Space Development Corporation, where she works on life support systems and now spacesuits, right, Baily?
Oh, yeah.
So her master's is in space resources. She has been an analog astronaut at high seas. Let's see, she's also a SpaceKind graduate and TA in SpaceKind 3 with me right now, if I got that right. Mm-hmm. And she is also, as you might tell from her handle, an engineer girl, a martial artist, and she is scuba certified, if I got that right too, and is into snowboarding and all kinds of other fun activities. So Baily, it occurs to me we probably should do an episode with you as the guest speaker as well, but we are thrilled to have you here as the guest host today. And I will let you take it away and introduce our friend Liam, and then I'll shut down the slides and we'll go from there.
That sounds great. And yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Obviously pretty well acquainted with both of you guys. But Liam, I'm so excited to talk to you today. So let's see, I've known Liam for what, 2-3 years now, and we've just kind of been interacting. Liam is the CEO of ImageBeam Inc. And basically ISS Above is just this amazing platform that he's created to help share the excitement of seeing the ISS and like what the astronauts are looking at and everything like that. It's cool because it unites the entire world. It's got over 600,000 viewers, which is amazing. And Liam, you've worked with a lot of people from NASA, the ISS laboratory, solar system ambassadors, all these amazing partners who are helping you do this. And just communicating with students, teachers, everything like that. And this is basically a platform based off of Raspberry Pi, right, Liam?
You got it, yes.
I know Raspberry Pi, I could do that, right? Like, that's amazing that it's just out there for everyone. So first off, what did I miss in explaining what the heck ISS Above is? What are the amazing things that I missed?
Yeah, really good. So part of the ISS Above is displaying what you're seeing behind me right now. Does anyone recognize this? You might have to be in the Southern Hemisphere to really sort of have a chance of doing it. I know someone here is from the Southern Hemisphere, Jackie from Australia. But this is actually a view over the little island to the southeast of Australia called New Zealand. And that's actually Auckland. So part of what my ISS Above does is display this in schools and science centers and in private homes, and really gives access to that. But that's just only one part of it. So what it first started out as was a weekend project. In fact, this is one of my first units that I created. This is a 3D printed case with one of the original versions of of a Raspberry Pi, and this is from 2013. And all this does, when I released this through Kickstarter, was light up every time the space station was above. So, and just to give you an idea of that, I wanted to quickly just show you. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to show you an example of all of the ways that I got Raspberry Pis to flash when the space station was above. So let me just share my screen. Hopefully sharing the right screen. And I'm just going to launch this little video over here. There's something about flashing lights. I've always liked flashing lights. And there are 5 different ISS Above implementations there, but I initially created it as a Kickstarter. And that was after I'd sort of initially come up with the idea and built it. I, decided to launch it as a Kickstarter. Well, it's sort of like, it wasn't decided. I was invited by friends. they said, we want one of these, and how do we get them? So I created a Kickstarter and didn't know whether it was going to be of interest to people, and was very pleasantly surprised. After 3 days, it was funded, fully funded. And, you know, I shipped around 350 as a result of that Kickstarter in 2014. And to say the initial version, all it did was flash. And the point about that was, you know, my history comes back to public outreach. I used to be the president of Orange County Astronomers, and that's in where Mark lives in Orange County, California. And I'd often go out with the outreach team, and that was at a time in the early 2000s when the space station was just being built. It was in its early days. And whenever the space station would be going by, especially if there was a shuttle coming by as well, it was always a big hit with the public when we could point that out in the sky visibly. And the ISS Above lights up both when it's visible, when you can go outside and look at it, but also, and this is the key thing, it lights up every single time it's passing by, and that can often be in the daytime. Well, in April of 2014, NASA launched a whole new experiment that was a big new capability where it provided 24/7 views of the Earth. And I figured out that I could reprogram all those Raspberry Pis that were out there and get them to feature live views of the Earth. You know, this is from a different camera system that NASA has now, but nevertheless, it's available 24/7. And the little Raspberry Pi, it both flashes and gives other information. In fact, this is pre-recorded that I've got right here, but I'm going to switch it now to, this is live, and it seems like the space station is pausing every now and again. It isn't. That's just my, the live feed, for some reason, is just slowing down a little bit every now and again. But what I'll show you is behind the scenes. So what I've got here, I'm going to switch away. I'm going to show you actually the space station. I have this ISS Above configured so that it believes it's at Kennedy Space Center, which is where tomorrow a Boeing, the Boeing Starliner, which is atop a, is it an Antares rocket? Is that what it is, Baily, from ULA?
I think so.
Yeah, so it's going to be launching. In fact, I've got a little news item here. Yeah, this should tell us coverage of ULA's. Yeah, there we go. It is an Atlas V. That's actually an image showing you what that is. And all of this information that I'm displaying right now is coming from the Raspberry Pi. So it has this info. It shows the actual orbit, so you can track the space station. You may just be able to pick out where there's a red circle. That's slap over Florida. And in just 7 minutes, the space station will be above the horizon over Kennedy Space Center. So yeah, you should see that there too, right? Yeah, on yours. There you go. Mark's verified my Python calculations are working there. There you go. Yeah, I've got this. This is all written in Python. And so, but it really is just a simple device. And if I beam myself back in, so that shows you who's up there right now. Nice to see that we've got a little bit more representation there. With Jessica Watkins and Samantha Cristoforetti up there. But just to show you what will happen in a few minutes, you will see it going on right now. You can see it's flashing blue. The LED on there, it flashes blue when the space station is less than 10 minutes away. And the number of flashes are the number of minutes away it is. So that means this can just be in a classroom and students, without seeing the screens even, really know that the space station is going to be passing by soon. And when it does pass by, I can trick it here. It does this for the whole time it's above. And in some places, they have some super special LEDs plugged into it. One of those would be Johnson Space Center, where they have a version of this plugged into one of the entrances to Johnson Space Center, and it lights up a whole set of LEDs. So I probably sort of rambled on a little bit more around that, because there's a whole story between, you know, how that happened and how now I'm an education partner with the ISS National Lab, and I have a reseller in Australia who's actually on the, there it is, Jackie from One Giant Leap in Australia. She runs the education company based in Sydney that does education programs all around Australia, and they ship ISS Aboves to the whole of Australia and many other places too.
Yeah, the Middle East, the United Arab Emirates, we've got some in Dubai, the whole Asia Pacific, Australia region. And Liam Liam talks about the applications that he can think of, but on the weekend, not last weekend, the weekend before, we did an event. 70,000 people came through in 3 days, and we had live feed. We had the ISS Above on a big screen TV, and we do that too at the Avalon Air Show, where they have over 1 million people go through there. So we're always, everyone loves it. We talk to kids about where it is, and people go, what is that? I've actually sold to schools, and the schools link in and they use it in their TV display. You know, when the cranky parents turn up at the office and they want to yell at somebody. I told them it's really relaxing. So I have friends who bought it just to have it on because it relaxes them. They watch the footage. So I do know a couple of schools who've got the ISS Above as their display thing in their school, in the area that they put the parents before they go in and see the school principal. So has many different functions and many different uses, but it's just brilliant. And I got mine. I went to Seek and won it as a lucky door prize. It was one of the first ones, I think, Liam. And
that's right.
Yeah, so I've been madly running around Australia going, check this out. Yeah, so it's very cool.
I love the fact that you brought that story. It sort of really represents something that I did not predict. I had no idea of what was going to happen when I decided to create the ISS Above. And Jackie's a good example of something unpredictable. That I just had no idea that was where it was going. So way to go.
Liam, we had a question in the chat while
Jackie
right.
was sharing.
Yeah. Motasham, if I'm guessing his name well enough, he's been at a few of these, but he's wondering if it'll be available in Pakistan.
In where?
Pakistan.
Yeah, so you can definitely purchase them. So online on my website, I ship worldwide, but Australia might even be quicker. So either way,
and we have 2 in stock.
There you go. Yeah, the strange thing with this is, and one of the challenges I've had over the last couple of years, is supply chain issues. The Raspberry Pis are practically out of stock everywhere, and in fact there are price gouges that now, just for the Raspberry Pi, instead of it being $35, if you want to get it on Amazon right now, it's $250. So, I just happen to have a nice big stock of Raspberry Pis in my assembly cupboard over here. I do this in my home office, so it's sort of like it's just in the cupboard over there. But there we go. Mm-hmm.
Still, I mean, first of all, how could you not talk about this for the full hour, right? Like, this is such a cool, I mean, we could just fly around the world and just talk about that for the whole time. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad to see it's such an international, it really brought everyone, obviously Pakistan, Australia, everyone kind of can look at this and be like, oh yeah, that's home. Mm. So my question right now is, how the heck did you get into this field of you mentioned you're really into outreach. Obviously, you have to be able to code, and you have some software experience to pull this up. So how did those things kind of merge together to bring this?
Yeah, so I've been coding since I was in high school. For me, computing occurred because of something called the BBC Micro and the Research Machines Nimbus. They were sort of, really the first kinds of computers that students could program in BASIC at school. So I chose for myself a career from that point on where programming, creating solutions for things using code was something that I did. So, from high school, which we're talking about, my high school was, I graduated in 1981. So, a few years ago. But I'd always been interested in space. And, my coding was often about my vision for how to connect people. I sort of look back at what I was doing with coding, even in the early days. I wanted to know how to do 3D projections of the solar system in, using a BBC Micro. That was what I wanted to do. But it was always about having people feel connected to ideas, to other people. Early on, that was what I was doing. So when I came to the USA, I was an IT director for a company in the UK, and I started up a new company over here in software development. It eventually grew to 10,000 people just around the year 2000, and then went bankrupt. It was called the dot-com bust, and that company went bust. But nevertheless, I was always in that role of a technical leadership role and a programming role. By the way, just behind me here, that is London at night. Just so as everyone knows, that's what it looks like from the space station. And I grew up a little bit to the northeast. I'm just at the very top center of the frame there, if I could point out where it was. Anyhow, but yeah, so that's how I got into the programming side of things. That was what I was doing. I had an interest in astronomy, obviously being president of Orange County Astronomers. And, this was really a combination of all of those things, plus an interest in video streaming, which I had done conferences before conferences should have been live streamed. I was doing live streaming of technical conferences, using the very earliest kind of streaming when people still had dial-ups. Baily, you probably don't even know what that is, right? So
I have a distant memory.
You do? Okay, where it goes, that blink, 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 that sort of thing. And yeah, we had people dialing in from England, from India, to this astro imaging conference that was at UC Irvine, Mark, in the year 2001, 2002. And that's what I was doing. So the ISS Above is sort of like an amalgam of all of those interests, but more than anything, it's my interest that is somewhat sort of hidden. You wouldn't know that this is what it means to me. The ISS Above is about connecting people together around the world. It's about having people feel closer to the human beings who are in space, so that they're not just somewhere in space. Some people may know they're up there, many people don't, but this is about knowing they're above you in space. And to me, that's an opportunity to feel closer to one another. I don't know how many people here have gone outside and watched the International Space Station as it's flying by, a very bright star in the sky, or sort of like that. But it's something that brings the neighborhood together. You go out there, I was out there the other night during the lunar eclipse. And while the lunar eclipse was in totality just a few minutes before, the space station was going by. So all my neighbors who are out there, that I'd accosted as they were walking their dogs down the street, It was about using that as an opportunity to have them connected to just all of that.
Yeah, well, and you say that that's like, I'm not surprised by that statement at all, especially coming from you, Liam. It is more about the connecting humans together, connecting them from space, and then using this really cool STEM tool that you've developed over your career to help you accomplish that. That's like bringing it all together. That's so perfect. I love that. So specifically, one thing I really like about ISS Above is it gets students to stop and think and say, oh, this is totally approachable. This is something I can see. So do you have any like what is the most inspiring thing for like students and teachers that you've seen when they learn about the ISS or ISS Above?
Yeah, so there are two ways that I really see that happening. Firstly, just having this in the classroom, it has people sort of engaged without the teachers having to do anything, because, you know, like the space station is approaching Florida. In fact,
here we go.
Yeah, this is actually, so, and I'm going to take that down. See, this is Florida right now. So it looks a little bit low contrast, and I think that's just because that's the time. Oh, in fact, is this? Yeah, I know it's going from Columbia over to Florida, I think. But either way, yeah, there we go. Fort Gates, Florida, United States. So, you know, what it really has students get access to is this is us from space, for one thing. And then one of the remarkable things I've had reported from teachers, I'll give an example of a teacher in Galveston, Texas, where it's at an elementary school, but the students go up to this screen every morning when they come in, and they sit there identifying the types of things they're seeing. It could be clouds, it could be rivers. They have a globe of the Earth, and then they locate where it is based around, you know, what I also show is, so my device puts the name of the area below the space station that you can see there. And it tells you when the next sunset is and stuff like that. Oh, by the way, Jackie, that's a new feature coming where it will display that time to sunset actually on the video screen. So yeah, I don't know whether I've adequately answered that, but it tends to be a natural way that students get engaged with it. Part of it helps, I think, it's got this flashy LED, which I've been told by teachers, they actually appreciate the interruption that is. That it's something that has students. It's sort of like squirrel, look at this, but it's in a good way. It's actually a good kind of trouble. And particularly if it's going off and it is a daytime pass, obviously it would be whenever students see it in the classroom, it means it's passing by during the daytime, unless they night students somewhere. But it just means it's an opportunity for learning. And that's what comes next. That's why I'm an education partner with the ISS National Lab. And it's really a gateway into all of those kinds of education resources that they have. And Jackie from One Giant Leap in Australia has her own resources that she brings to bear there too. But many of the resources that are with the ISS National Lab can be used all around the world. So there's some really cool things there.
So I have a question. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here. I love this because, as we've talked about, it's like, look, this is what the astronauts are seeing. They're not that far away and all this stuff. Do you have any ideas when we go to further out in the solar system? Do you have ideas of how you want to continue building that connection, maybe, even when they're further away from Earth?
Yeah, so there's several things about that. One of them is obviously the next place we're going. There's two places really. In low Earth orbit, we're staying there, right? You're helping, you know, in that whole realm yourself. So even though the space station has a notional end of life now in 2030, sometime before that, there will begin to be commercial space stations, plural, in low Earth orbit. So I think that's always going to be out there as things to engage students with. But next we're going out to the moon, and there will be several things about that. Firstly, the gateway system, which is the not fully occupied, it won't be permanently crewed, but when there are missions to the moon, the gateway system will be available. And I expect, just from conversations that I've had with folks who are building those new space stations, we will have live video available. So part of what I can imagine I'll be doing is creating versions of this for those different kinds of use cases. So at the moment, ISS Above is already, you can switch it to track the Planetary Society's light sail, which is a CubeSat mission that Richard Shute from the Planetary Society is one of the guests, one of the ones hanging out here listening to this, but they have versions of ISS Above in their office that are tracking their light sail. And so I expect those things will happen. It'll be curious where we go further afield, because it's one thing to be 1 or 2 seconds delay time from the moon. But as we will know, when it's out at Mars, things will never be live. Obviously, they could be live as they can be, which is based around, it's arrived, the signals arrived here from Mars. But part of what this does a good thing, part of what this does really well is it creates a packaged, focused delivery system for this content. So that's part of what this is about. It's and in some cases you can think, there's a part of this that can be done on websites. What I've got to say about that, I have a free version of the tracker that shows 2 live video feeds, and I'll put the URL into the chat in a little while. But it's a tracker that shows the space station and both live video feeds that you can see, although one of them has been off air for the last couple of days while they've been upgrading it. So, but anyway, hopefully that gives you some idea of what I'm thinking about that. But a different product, but it's certainly, I certainly see a place for this kind of content delivery. Because teachers don't, I found they appreciate not having to have something that they have to do a lot of maintaining with. They've got enough to do in the classroom. And this device just sits plugged in and you don't need to do anything. It will just happily do whatever it's doing, displaying the info, displaying the live video feed when it's available, and showing the other information at other times.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just for teachers and students, right? I'm like, how can we get one of these in my office?
Yeah, do you have a Raspberry Pi? Did I hear you say? Or you've got access to a Raspberry Pi?
I've done it. I don't know. You've definitely changed how I look at it. And actually, that's kind of leads into one of my next kind of questions. Like, I mean, coding, software, I mean, I'm an engineer, but I never was really interested in that stuff. I was like, that's just voodoo happening on the screen and I don't fully understand. But you really like brought it to life and kind of gave it this more fun aspect of like, look, you can still be creative with things in STEM. Like, it's not just books and engineering, it's like cool things that get people talking. Do you have any advice for like, students, younger people here, of like how to bridge the gap from not just creative fun, but also having that STEM background and finding a way to merge the two and feeling like you belong in the industry?
Yeah, really good question. And the way that resonates with me is, so I did some college, I never finished college. My excuse is that I started a family very early and decided to leave college and just get out there in the world. So to some extent, that's one of those things, particularly with a career with NASA and with other aerospace organizations, it helps to have very much, the kind of qualifications that you have, Baily. You know, you gave yourself that route to be where you are. Now, I came at it later in my life, but it was something I always wanted to do. I grew up in the UK during the Apollo era. I was 6 years old when Apollo 11 landed on the moon, and it was the biggest thing for me in the UK. You know, I don't know whether that's well known in the US, but in the UK, it was the biggest thing. But I never had a thought that for me, being a guy, you know, a young man growing up in England, that it was possible. Even there was no thought that, oh, I could ever work for NASA. Now, I see, if I could have said something to that little boy back then who was 6 years old, is yes, you could. So, and it's not something that I regret, you know, looking back at it. You know, I've now got connections with NASA and with, you know, I've met dozens of astronauts. You know, I've had wine with Scott Kelly. I've and Anne McLean, you know, sort of heroes in the space world for me. And, you know, that happened because there was a point where I just didn't write myself out of the picture. You know, the biggest barrier, I think, to getting things done is that talk that goes on in your head sometimes saying, you know, I shouldn't be here. You know, why am I here? I don't know people in NASA. I'm not in aerospace. I'm not even, you know, a teacher, but I'm just passionate about this. So for me, I took those things and I realized, and maybe it's partly my privilege being a white dude, but sometimes I think that, you know, looking back, I think sometimes that is part of, you know, what is invisible to me is that, you know, how that did open some doors sometimes. But more often than not, all it was like my first contact with NASA was after their public affairs office connected with me a couple of times when they heard about ISS Above. I got myself invited to NASA socials. So that is a great way. If anyone here is, you know, both here and listening to this afterwards, look out for when NASA has what's called a NASA social, where you can apply to go to a launch event or other event at any of the NASA centers, and you get connected to people that you just don't have access to otherwise. But more often than not, you know, what I would say I've done is just researched who, like at NASA, who was running the cameras, you know, the camera system that's showing this view. I discovered there are actual real people like Baily, right? Like you and like others who are in those organizations that are delighted when members of the public contact them, especially when you have an idea for adding value to what they do, showing more people it. So that sort of like started me on this realm of getting connected with the ISS National Lab, when I realized how approachable those people are. And I think that's what is key to everyone who's listening to this is be passionate about what you're interested in and keep at it. You know, find those other people who are in those organizations, and you may find that they are more open to receiving a call from you or an email than you might imagine. So back then, the NASA phone directory was public.
Oh, wow.
So
the power if I had that now.
Yeah, that's right. It's now no longer public, but you can often find the direct phone numbers for people if you search for them. There are often published papers and other realms where you will have the phone number and the email of people that you want to connect with, and find those out and rather than, I can say this from this side of that phone call. I've just discovered that if you have something good to add, and you're passionate, you'll find people will be on your side. They will delight that you've reached out, you've had that initiative, and they'll become your cheerleaders.
I agree with that. And I have to say, like, you saying that other people are approachable, like, you are the most approachable. Like, so thank you for giving that back, I guess, that like now you've reached this point in your career where you can now be approachable to other people and bridge that gap. And I think I really only know Liam and Mark, but I think all three of us are fairly approachable for everyone in the audience. Like, I think all of us are more than happy to help you guys out if you have something like Liam here. I have tons of other questions for you, especially around that imposter syndrome thing. That's something I relate to. But I do want to open it up if there are questions. I did see there was one. So let's do group questions now. I didn't see the chat. If you want to come off mute and ask your question, that's a good way to do that, if you want.
Yeah, so anyone who just wants to jump out with their question.
Motasham put a question in the chat. He has spoken up before, but if he doesn't pipe in, I'd be happy to read his question.
Yeah.
Okay. I will go ahead and read the question. But basically, it's a question for Liam. Do you think these kinds of devices are needed in the future for keeping interest alive in the younger generation? Or is there another better way to do this? If it's the best way, how do you think we can come up with such ideas to encourage this kind of approach?
Yeah, I would never claim that my ISS Above sort of device is the only way. It is definitely one way to provide a way of inspiring students. I think you're in Pakistan. I think that was what I heard. So I don't have one in Pakistan. I have some in India. And I know one of the challenges that can be a situation in various parts of the world is access to internet bandwidth. So that's a consideration. But if you have good internet bandwidth, this is a simple way to have a reliable display device, a digital device that sort of captures everything about the space station. So I think I don't see a reason for it not being a useful tool going forward. Let me put in the URL for this. In fact, I'll probably share my screen just for a second, and I'm going to bring up this free tracker that I've got. So yeah, let me just copy the URL from over here into the chat. So one of the things I am looking at, if you click on that, it'll bring up the tracker that I'm just about to share. And let me just refresh it here. This is where the tracker shows, it's sort of like what you've got behind you, except it does show two of the live video feeds that are from the space station. The station's currently in darkness, so that's why there's not a lot to see. And it is going over Paris, and which, as long as it is totally in, let me have a look at this. Sunrise, yeah. So in fact, yeah, if I go full screen on this, in fact, I can show it on the other one. But let me just see. This is live, and it's a little bit difficult to see. It could be cloudy, of course. That's in fact, yeah. Did anyone see a flash then? I think that may have been an electrical storm. See a little bit
of things moving, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So there was an electrical storm over here. So we're not going to see, this is the problem with things like this. If it's cloudy, you can't see anything, which it probably just was. But an example yeah. So I do have examples of Paris and things like that. But anyway, moving on. So that's sort of where I am with that question. I think there's other opportunities to bring in other approaches to do this. VR is a great way to experience the space station as well.
That was my kind of my next question. If you had unlimited money, resources, and all that kind of stuff, what would you add on to ISS Above? Like, what's the next step? Is it going to VR, or is there other ideas you have that you want to make it even that much better?
Yeah. So yeah, I have a personal interest in things like telemetry. You're probably used to sort of looking at this. You have some spacecraft hardware, and you have to know what's going on with that hardware, wherever it is, right? And that's called telemetry. And I've started for a while now tracking the telemetry from the space station. And I've actually been working with the University of Berkeley. They are creating a set of tools for undergraduate use where they're taking the live telemetry from the space station. And telemetry is things like how much urine is in the urine reservoir, on the space station. And if you track that, you can see when it gets full, and then when they flush it, when it then goes into, they don't flush it. It actually goes.
You need that water.
They need that water. That's right. Don't throw that water away. Don't. It actually goes into the water recycling thing. You can track the CO2, and you can see it gets higher and higher and higher. And then astronauts apparently report getting headaches. So before that happens, they have to replace the CO2 scrubbers. Mm-hmm. Or they're tracking the attitude of the space station. And then if you're like me, I have an alarm that lets me know when the space station is doing some big moves, which it does do occasionally. And occasionally it does it when it shouldn't. And that's a really interesting thing to know. So like I was one of the first ones that knew the space station was being spun around by the Nell Walker. Yeah, I did the breaking news. I broke the news before NASA. So because I knew they hadn't parked the solar panels, and the thing started spinning 540 degrees. It spun. And I got that because I was tracking the telemetry, and I'm looking at ways where that kind of thing could be added in. Some other things I'm working on is I've started capturing these clips and sharing them on my Twitter account. No one else in the world does that. NASA doesn't do it. You don't have an easy way to look at prior clips from anything that NASA provides. It's not a focus. It's not critical to mission operations to have this. So I'm looking at building systems where that is available so that, you want to have a look at what passes were over Denver, or what passes were over Sydney, or, over wherever you are in Pakistan. So all of those, you could query that and it will show you those clips. You can somewhat do that on my Twitter feed if you're good at searching. You can search for places that I have shared over Twitter.
We do have a couple more questions in the chat there. There's one, I think, from a teacher, Nurul, and I'm not sure where you are. If you want to put in the chat where you are, that'd be fun to see too. But she says she would love to bring art and education into the usage of ISS Above. How can we spark creativity and inspiration?
Great question. Yeah. I love that question. So
she's from Malaysia, by the way.
Oh, from Malaysia. Awesome. Nice to meet you from Malaysia. I've been to KL a couple of times. So it goes together so well. And I'll give you two examples of that. One of them is, and this is a worldwide program. You in Malaysia, you can apply to ARIS, Amateur Radio on the ISS, and you can apply to have a live radio downlink with where your students get to ask, really interview an astronaut in real time. And it can be, depending on your capability for doing ham radio at the school, you can do that directly, or you could do it using a telebridge. But so the reason that fits into bringing art in is when you have those events, the kinds of things you want to have students engaged in is creating paintings of their own space station. And I've got countless examples where that's what schools have done, because they never just leave it in the STEM box. They really do break it out into much more of the arts, English language. In fact, there was one elementary school where the teacher was discouraged from teaching science. And the way she got around that, the way she got around that was to have students write stories about, what would happen, an emergency on the space station. So that teacher had students creating poems, creating, their stories and other things. And all of this stuff is, put up on the wall so that their work can be seen by everyone. Yeah.
It sounds like to me what you're saying, Liam, is go out and create. Just go for it.
Absolutely go for it. And you definitely do want to check out, if I just share my screen one last time, I'm going to show you the ISS National Lab site. If I can stop that thing. Yeah, here we go. They have a page on their site for educational programs. And many of the programs on here, if I can bring up the chat while that is going, are free, and you can select it by age range, subjects, and you can look at all of the programs that the ISS National Lab puts up. And just to explain, the ISS National Lab is the part of the International Space Station that is called the Destiny Lab. It's where most of the US side of the research is conducted. And that research can include research from the ground, as in from schools, from universities, and there are various programs that are here that really integrate with that education.
You even got Nickelodeon. That's cool. I know that name.
Nickelodeon. In fact, the big thing that's happening actually right as we're doing this is there is a read along and what did they call it? It's actually with Crayola. So Crayola has sent a bunch of their crayons, I guess, or whatever they've got now, onto the space station, and an astronaut is doing a read along and having students draw the moon.
Yeah.
So
Liam, I got one more question for you. And it's coming from the audience, and I actually very much relate to it because I am oftentimes like the youngest person in the room, so I really understand where this is coming from. Is basically, what advice do you have for a teen who might feel ignored due to their age? Is there like someone you recommend reaching out to, or a way to get over that hump of, hey, I might be young, but I still have a lot to offer?
Yeah, what do I have to say about that? There's two things. One of them, it may be a stretch to say this is connected to that, but it's a story I've heard multiple times from different teachers where the ISS Above has been in the classroom, and there has sometimes been that very quiet student. And maybe they fit the description that you mentioned there. And because the ISS Above can be a passive sort of tool where it's just in the classroom and someone can see what's going on, it can then turn into an interest that they then become what's called the space station ace, where it empowers them to do research and then share that interest and knowledge with their other class members. So, part of it is I got to do what I did because I'm interested in it. And at every step of the way, where there was that point where I thought, I don't know if I have enough knowledge to make it in this. What I'd often do is take a little problem, a little part of the big problem, and see if I could get that working. When the live video feed was available, I had a question can I make that work on the Raspberry Pi? And I then go into research mode where I sort of just try a few different things, and it doesn't matter if I fail. I just keep working at it. So that's one part of it is, wherever you are, firstly, don't say no to yourself. Or if you do, I mean, you hear yourself saying that. We all have that little voice in our head that sometimes, is not our best friend. And sometimes it's a case of acknowledging that, oh yeah, I really don't think I have enough to do this. And then in any case, take that next step, whatever it is for you. And it could be that, yes, you do reach out to, in the NASA world, and I know that doesn't work for everyone worldwide, but there are ways you can apply yourself to become an intern at NASA. The cool thing is that many countries now, because of the new space arena that we're in with commercialization of space, you will find in your country, there is often a space agency.
That's true.
There's the Space Agency of Nigeria, and it's a space agency legitimately. They have their own satellites. It's important to Africa that the continent of Africa, has a say in how their country utilizes, the spacecraft operations that can monitor their own country. So, NASA has a commitment to provide that for the world. But nevertheless, many countries are going their own way. Spaceports, in the UK, there's like 5 different spaceports that are being put together. The first one I think that will be active is in Cornwall, where it'll have a launch of Virgin Orbit coming up. I don't know if it's the end of this year or early next year. So unlike me, who I wrote myself out of aerospace because I thought the UK wasn't doing anything when I was 6 years old, especially when our own rocket program blew up on the pad, I think for the 6th time, and they said, we're giving up. It was literally that point. There was it's like they had the SpaceX point where they said, if this one blows up, we're giving up. And where with Elon's SpaceX, it launched the 3rd one, whatever it was, when it was successful. We didn't have that in the UK, but now things are changing. Yeah. So
I like, from what I heard, what you just said is the best way to overcome that is not asking people for help. It's figuring out how you can help everyone else and integrate yourself in. It doesn't matter, like you can do it yourself. And I'm really glad you wrote your way back into the space industry. I think that's awesome. It's been great to get to know you and everything. So there's a lot of really good ideas in the chat, Liam. I think you should check it out if you have time. But I want to hand this back over to Mark and thank you guys all for such a fun conversation about ISS Above.
So good. Thank you, Baily, for guest hosting with us. Such great questions, great energy, and thank you, Liam, for sharing so much with us. I knew you were a fantastic space educator on top of everything else in your circuitous route here. I heard you say somewhere in there, you're not even a teacher, but you are, and we all learned from you today. So thank you so much for being here with us. I do want to take just a minute to, Liam, there was some, I don't know if you got it in the chat, but there were some questions for your contact information too.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. And
did you advertise being approachable?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to sort of tease next week's show too. Leslie will be back hosting, and Chris Simbrowski will be our guest from the Inspiration 4 mission. So, and Chris is very dedicated to space education, particularly in the wake of his mission. And he's very involved with Space Camp and their 40th anniversary that's coming up. So it'll be a really well-timed show, and hope you guys can join us for that.
The week after that, Chris if he has an ISS Above.
I imagine he must, if you're asking.
I know. There you go. Spoiler alert.
And the week after, we've got Katrina Carter-Jornet, who's an engineer at Virgin Galactic, working on commercial spacecraft. So really some great episodes coming up, including some of the ones I shared in the chat, a lot of the artists and designers we have coming. So next week, Chris Sombrowski and Katrina Carter-Journay the week after. Thank you again, Baily and Liam. Really a fun hour to spend with you guys. And I will go ahead and stop the recording and get this posted soon.
Great.
And thank you everybody also who showed up and participated. Thanks, Paul, for the applause there. It's really fantastic to have the folks who are here live asking questions in the chat. Thanks all.
Check out that launch tomorrow, the Boeing launch. I'm going to be watching that. Oh, this is Denver, by the way, behind me.
There it is. Yes.
Thank you.
Godspeed, Nat Astor to Boeing tomorrow.